The message I'd love to share today is beautifully simple, and I'd love to share it through my own personal story, if that's okay. Um, how TED Talk saved me, this might sound like a bit of hyperbole, like a bit of exaggeration. Like, how can somebody who's on a red dot sharing some story save somebody? And I get that it sounds exaggerated, but I'd love, if that's okay, just to share a little bit about where I'm at and where really how TED and TEDx's have really helped reframe my own personal situation. So going back a few years ago, when I say a few, a number of years ago, I had beautiful honor to be an executive coach traveling all over North America. I was, not to brag, but I was in boardrooms where it wasn't just like multi-million, but US billion dollar deals. I think the biggest one was 4 billion US. And so I really felt quite proud of myself and felt that, I was, from a business perspective, I was very successful. I was traveling, first class on the airlines. The scotch that we were drinking was just scotch. It was unbelievable. The steaks that I had, one steak cost more than my first car. And I loved the hotels we were staying at were beautiful. But despite all this, and staying at some of the finest hotels throughout North America, I was getting actually really embarrassed because each night I was wetting the bed. Now, I mean, not like necessarily wetting the bed like that, but from my neck right down to my toes, the bed would just be soaked. And I thought, you know what? Probably need to get this checked out. This is probably not normal because it didn't just happen once, but it was happening on a regular ongoing basis. So, naturally I went into the walk-in clinic and they did lots of different tests. And, the first doctor I saw was like, don't worry. There's probably nothing really to worry about. So I let it go. And of course, months went on and, had a few more tests and I got the call to say, hey, we'd love you to come in. We just need to have a talk with you. And I don't know, I had that, feeling in my stomach, but I kept thinking to myself, you know what, it's going to be okay. The doctors are saying there's nothing. It's probably just the flu and I'm going to be okay. Well, let me tell you, I'll never forget that time sitting in that doctor's office. I can't remember her name. And in fact, it was almost like an episode of Charlie Brown when she was talking because I really wasn't understanding everything she was saying. It really was just all mumbled jumbled. But I heard the word cancer, but I also heard the term no known curative therapy. And that just kept ringing through my head as she talked and talked and talked. And I stopped her and I said, does that mean it's incurable? And she just looked at me and said, yes. But here's what we're going to do. But yeah, there is no known curative therapy for the type of cancer that you have. And I just remember that hit me so hard. Because it's one thing to have a game plan to go, yeah, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to be able to accomplish. But to know that it had no cure, I was like, well, now what? What do I do? I was living in Toronto at the time and I walked home and the busiest intersection in Canada, it was like one of those busy intersections where everyone crosses from all four corners at the same time, Yonge and Dundas. And I just stopped in the middle and I just bawled. I started crying because I was like, what do I do? What's the purpose? Why move on? Why even try all of this if there's no known curative therapy? What's the point? If medical science is saying there's nothing to move forward to. And it was such a difficult time. I kept having to go back to the hospital for more tests. And I just remember lying there. And because it was a teaching hospital, of course, all the med students got to come in because I was a case study and they wanted to examine me. And each one got an opportunity to do a full body, medical scan of me and to prod me. And I just remember sitting there thinking, what's the point? Am I just existing so that these students can have an opportunity as a case study? And it really bothered me. And if you've ever lied on one of these tables, you know just how lonely it is. And I really did get deep into my own thoughts and probably places that I shouldn't have been thinking. But I really hit hard because what was the point? Doing all these wonderful medical tests for me, I just didn't know what was next. I went home and I binged, Family Guy and a bunch of other mindless TV shows because really, what was the point? And it just sort of reminded me of just sitting at home and what do I do? What do I do? But years ago, when I was going through this, I discovered this channel on my TV called the TED channel. And I discovered it. And it was interesting. As I was watching them, I started binging. And these talks from these wonderful individuals, talks around vulnerability, to this one talk around this gentleman who grew gardens in South LA. I don't know, it did something for me. And I binged and binged and binged these TED Talks because it got me thinking that these individuals looked at life through a different frame. It was the same life, it was the same world, but they just looked at things differently. And what I loved about it was that their behaviors and their actions were impacted and were different than others just because they looked at something through a different frame or a different lens. And that was really powerful for me. And that really helped me go, okay, so, now what? Because as an executive coach, I always challenge the executives that I worked with. There's no excuses. Now what? Well, here I am going, okay, it's incurable. I have cancer and there's nothing much they can do about it. So what's my now what? Well, cut to, I hired probably the best coach in my life, and I have to give her a call out, Trisha, because she really kicked me in the butt. We shared one evening that, one of my bucket list items was to do a TED talk. But like so many people, I had a lot of that negative self-talk. I'm like, well, I'm not good enough for that. What message do I have to share? And all these, the typical things that we think about in terms of why would I even bother? Am I good enough? And she really came back with, yes, you can. And now what are you going to do? And she challenged me on that. And so I'm really glad, and that Dawn shared as well earlier. I mean, I've had the opportunity now to travel the world. I've given 3 international TED Talks, one down in Furman University in South Carolina, another one where I had the opportunity to fly to Europe, go to the Netherlands and speak at The Hague at a TED Talk. And then most recently, it was a wonderful opportunity to work with Don and his team down in Cocoa Beach, Florida. Again, getting the opportunity to stand on the red dot and just share a story as part of my bucket list of something that I wanted to do. And I'm so glad and honored. But when I look back to it, it really hit that one of the things that saying I would love to do a TED Talk is it got back to, for me, having a purpose again. Because after that diagnosis of incurable cancer, really, what was the purpose of anything that I did? And TED was one of many things. My family, my dog, so many wonderful things that helped give me purpose, but it really helped me refocus and go, what if I looked at things from a different lens? One of the things, if you've ever given a TED Talk, it's a lot of work. And action was something that I needed to do. Sitting on the couch wasn't action. I needed to do something. And what we're seeing now in the world is so many people doing so many amazing things and taking action in whatever way they can. So my challenge is to really look at life differently. Yes, I could still frame it or look at the lens of, yes, I have incurable cancer. So why bother? But I could look at it, go, yes, I have incurable cancer. And now what can I do in the time that I have left? How am I going to make the most of it? What could I do? And so it's just a different lens. Framing it differently has now allowed me to have different behaviors and different outcomes and have a different impact. And I'm so honored for that. So I said my message was simple. It's all about how we frame things. It's all about not only what we find in our purpose, but more importantly, in the actions that we take and the impact that we have. And that's just a small reminder for all of us. And so throughout this, I'm going to continue reframing it and looking at what's happening in the world through a different lens and hopefully taking positive action to have impact with everyone. As we are physically distant, I'd love to stay creatively connected. And I'll just share this one image of me. So that my beard is my FU to cancer beard. And now I just got to think what I'm going to have to do now is an FU to COVID, but really focusing more on that high impact behavior that can really make an impact in the world. And I'd love to stay creatively connected with everyone. So my message is simple. The story is short, because I think really now it's about taking that action, changing our frame of mind and doing something positive. And you'd love to stay connected with me. I'd love that as well. I'm just going to leave up here different ways that you can stay connected with me. And I'm just so honored, Dawn and everyone at Speakers Pathway Coalition, for the opportunity to share my brief story and little reminder on how we look at what's happening in the world. Big cheers.